It was a tranquil afternoon by the shores of the Sea of Galilee, a place where the gentle lapping of waves against the shore seemed to carry whispers of hope and renewal. The sun was beginning to dip low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over everything. Yet, despite the beauty of the moment, an undercurrent of unrest rippled among the 12 disciples gathered around Jesus. They had traveled far, witnessed miracles that defied understanding, and absorbed profound teachings. Yet, despite all this, a sense of uncertainty gnawed at their hearts, not doubt in Jesus himself but a deep-rooted doubt in themselves. Peter, ever passionate but often unsure, sat closest to Jesus. His brow was furrowed, eyes cast down, unable to meet the gaze of his fellow disciples. He looked out over the tranquil waters and felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. How could he, a simple fisherman, fulfill the immense calling that had been placed upon him? He had walked on water, yet he had also sunk, gripped by fear. What made him worthy to lead others when he felt so lost himself? Thomas, known for his skepticism, was also troubled. His mind was a whirlwind of questions, each one clawing at his sense of purpose. He had always needed tangible proof to solidify his faith. Now, standing on the precipice of a mission that demanded unwavering belief, he grappled with feelings of inadequacy. How could he lead others when he was still unsure of his own path? Even John, the beloved disciple, felt the weight of self-doubt pressing upon him. Often regarded as the most faithful, he too questioned whether his love for Jesus would be enough to sustain him through the trials that lay ahead. He feared that his affection alone might not be sufficient in the face of impending challenges. Sensing the turmoil in their hearts, Jesus looked upon his disciples with profound understanding. He knew the weight of their doubts and he felt their insecurities. With compassion in his eyes, he beckoned them closer, inviting them to sit in a circle around him. The gentle evening breeze carried the promise of hope as he began to speak, his voice calm and reassuring. Once, Jesus began, there was a tiny bird who lived in a vast forest. This bird was no more remarkable than any other. Its feathers were plain, and its song was soft and unassuming. Each day, the bird would gaze up at the towering trees surrounding it and marvel at their grandeur. The trees stretched high into the heavens, their roots running deep into the earth, and the bird thought to itself, "How small and insignificant I am compared to these mighty giants." The bird watched as the trees provided shade and shelter to the creatures of the forest. Their branches spread wide, offering protection from the sun and rain. In their presence, the bird felt useless, doubting that it had any purpose at all. It believed that only the trees mattered, that only their strength and beauty were of value in the forest. One day a fierce storm came upon the forest. The winds howled, bending the trees and shaking their mighty trunks. The storm was so violent that many of the great trees, which had stood tall for centuries, began to crack and fall under the pressure. The little bird was terrified. It wondered if it too would be swept away by the storm. But as it looked around, the bird remembered something it had always possessed but rarely considered: its wings. Unlike the trees, the bird had the ability to rise above the storm. With a deep breath, the bird took flight, soaring higher and higher until it was far above the forest. It flew through the dark clouds, carried by the wind but never overwhelmed by it. And as it rose, it saw the forest below, ravaged by the storm, yet still full of life. When the winds calmed and the storm passed, the bird returned to the forest, its heart pounding with exhilaration. As the bird perched on the remains of a fallen tree, it noticed something miraculous. Where the mighty trees had once stood, small saplings had begun to sprout from the earth. In the very place where destruction had occurred, new life was taking root. The bird realized that while the storm had destroyed much, it had also made room for something new to grow. Jesus paused, allowing his words to settle in the hearts of his disciples. Silence enveloped them, each disciple lost in thought. Peter's brow furrowed deeper as he reflected on the story's meaning. Thomas, staring at the ground, felt his mind racing. Even John, typically confident in his faith, seemed deeply moved by the parable. Finally, Peter broke the silence. "Lord," he said softly, "I feel like that small bird. I look at the challenges ahead and feel unworthy. I see the storms on the horizon and I doubt myself. I'm not like the great trees. I have faltered before. How can I lead when I am so full of fear?" Jesus looked into Peter's eyes, filled with compassion. "Peter," he replied gently, "it is not the size or strength of the tree that defines its worth. The tree stands firm, yes, but when the storm comes it falls. The bird, though small and seemingly insignificant, has a gift the tree does not. It can rise above the storm. You, Peter, have been given that same gift. When the storms of life come, it is not your strength that will save you, but your faith." Next, Thomas spoke, his voice trembling with vulnerability. "Lord, I have questioned so much. I have doubted my place and my worth. I've always asked for signs and proof because faith alone feels too hard. What if I fall short? What if my doubt leads others astray?" Jesus turned to Thomas with understanding. "Thomas, your doubts do not make you unworthy. They are part of your journey, and they do not separate you from my love." Even in the storm, the bird was afraid, but it flew anyway. It used the wings it had been given, even when fear filled its heart. Your doubts may remain, but your faith will carry you. A tear rolled down Thomas's cheek as he realized that his doubts did not define him. Jesus didn't demand perfection. He only asked for trust, even in uncertainty. Then John, his voice barely above a whisper, said, "But Lord, how can we help others when we feel this way? How can we share your love and message if we struggle with our own doubts?" Jesus smiled gently at John. "By being real, by embracing your humanity. You do not need to be perfect to share my love. When you acknowledge your struggles, you create space for others to do the same. Together you will find strength. Remember the small bird. It did not become a mighty tree, but it found its place in the sky." The atmosphere shifted as the disciples began to feel a sense of camaraderie. They shared their experiences and fears openly, each one realizing they were not alone in their struggles. With each confession, the bonds between them grew stronger. Peter spoke again, his voice more confident. "If we are all like the bird, then we can lift each other up when the storms come. We can remind each other of our wings and the faith we share." As they embraced one another, tears flowed freely, not tears of sadness but tears of relief, understanding, and love. The burdens they carried felt lighter, their hearts swelling with gratitude. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors, the disciples made a pact. They would support one another, share their struggles, and remind each other of their purpose. They would face the world together, united in their mission to spread Jesus' message of love and hope. Days turned into weeks as they traveled from village to village, teaching, healing, and sharing the good news. Each challenge they faced tested their resolve, but they leaned on one another, recalling the story of the small bird and the great tree. One day, while journeying through a bustling market, they encountered a crowd gathered around a commotion. A distraught father cried out for help, his voice breaking through the noise of the marketplace. "My daughter is gravely ill. Please, someone help her." The disciples exchanged worried glances. They looked to Jesus, but he remained calm, encouraging them with his presence. Remembering their conversations and the strength they had found in each other, Peter stepped forward. "We can help," he called out, his voice steady. "We believe in the power of healing." As the crowd parted, they gathered around the father, who clutched his daughter tightly in his arms. Her eyes were closed and her body was limp. Panic surged within the disciples, but they held on to their faith, recalling the bird that rose above the storm. They formed a circle around the girl and began to pray together, their voices united in faith. The air was thick with tension, but as they prayed, a sense of peace washed over them. They felt the warmth of the Holy Spirit envelop them, guiding their words and actions. Moments later the girl stirred. Her eyes fluttered open and a smile broke across her face. The crowd gasped in disbelief, then erupted into cheers. The father fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he praised God for the miracle that had occurred. The disciples embraced each other, laughter and joy filling the air. They had faced a storm and risen together just like the small bird. Their faith had been tested, but they had soared. As they walked away from the market, hearts full, they reflected on the power of their shared experience. "We did it together," John said, smiling widely. "We remembered our wings and helped someone in need." Peter nodded, the realization settling in. It wasn't just me or any one of us. It was all of us united in faith. When we support each other, we can do anything. Jesus, walking alongside them, beamed with pride. "You see, my friends? You have risen above your doubts. You have found your wings, and together, you will continue to soar. Remember, doubt will come, but it does not define you. It is your faith that will carry you through." As they journeyed forward, Jesus reminded them, "You may stumble and you may fall, but each time you rise, you will be stronger. I will always be with you, guiding you, loving you. Trust in the journey and in each other." As the sun set over the horizon, casting a warm glow upon them, the disciples felt a profound sense of peace and purpose. They understood that they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the unwavering presence of Jesus guiding them every step of the way. Weeks passed, and the disciples continued their travels, spreading the message of love and hope. But as they ventured into a new village, they faced a daunting challenge. A powerful ruler had decreed that no one was to speak of love or unity. He believed such ideas would undermine his authority. Fear gripped the hearts of the villagers, who had long lived under his oppressive rule. The disciples gathered to discuss their predicament. "What do we do?" Thomas asked, his voice filled with anxiety. "If we speak out, we could be arrested, or worse." Peter felt the familiar weight of doubt creeping back in. "We must be wise. We cannot act rashly." Jesus listened quietly, observing their fears. "This is your opportunity to rise," he said at last. "Remember the bird. When it faced the storm, it did not back down, it took to the skies. You have the power to speak truth and love, even in the face of fear." Inspired by Jesus' words, the disciples began to devise a plan. They decided to hold a gathering under the cover of night, where they could share stories of hope and love without fear of retribution. They spread the word discreetly, urging the villagers to join them. As night fell, the air buzzed with anticipation. Villagers began to gather in a hidden glade outside the town, the moonlight casting a soft glow on their anxious faces. Peter stepped forward, his heart racing. "We are here to share the message of love that Jesus taught us," he said, his voice steady. "We believe that love is stronger than fear. It can unite us, heal us, and give us the courage to stand against tyranny." As he spoke, a sense of electricity filled the air. The villagers listened intently, drawn in by Peter's passionate words. They began to share their own stories of resilience, of how love had carried them through difficult times. One by one they found their voices inspired by the disciples' courage. As the gathering continued, the disciples led songs of praise and unity, filling the night with hope. Their voices blended harmoniously, rising up into the heavens. The atmosphere shifted. Fear began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of strength and community. Suddenly, torches flickered in the distance. The ruler's guards had arrived, having heard of the gathering. A hush fell over the crowd, and panic surged through the hearts of the disciples. Thomas trembled. "What do we do now?" But Jesus stepped forward, calm and resolute. "Stand firm," he instructed. "This is the moment of truth. Let your faith shine." The guards approached, ready to silence the gathering. But before they could speak, the villagers, emboldened by the presence of the disciples, began to rise together. "We will not be silenced," they proclaimed in unison. "We choose love over fear." The guards were taken aback by the display of unity. The villagers stood shoulder to shoulder, refusing to back down. The sight was powerful. It was a manifestation of the strength that comes from community and faith. Jesus, standing in front of the disciples, addressed the guards. "Love cannot be imprisoned," he declared, his voice carrying authority. "It transcends fear and oppression. You have a choice to make: continue to serve a ruler who spreads fear, or join the ranks of those who dare to love. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The guards, witnessing the courage of the villagers and feeling the weight of Jesus' words, hesitated. They exchanged glances, their own doubts surfacing. Some began to lower their weapons, conflicted by the undeniable spirit of love and unity that enveloped the gathering. As the tension hung in the air, a ripple of change began to spread among the guards. One by one they stepped forward, casting aside their weapons. "We choose love," one of them finally spoke, tears in his eyes. "We want to protect, not oppress." A wave of emotion swept through the crowd. The villagers embraced the guards, and a newfound alliance was born. Together they formed a community bound by love and hope, no longer fearing the shadows of oppression. The disciples, watching this transformation unfold, felt a profound sense of joy. They had faced their fears, risen above self-doubt, and together forged a new path. In the days that followed, the village experienced a remarkable change. With the guards now standing with the people, they began to speak out against the rulers' oppressive laws. The disciples led discussions about love, faith, and unity, fostering an environment where everyone felt safe to share their thoughts. As the village blossomed with newfound hope, they held a celebration to honor their triumph over fear. Music filled the air, laughter echoed, and the sense of community grew stronger. Villagers and disciples alike danced together, their spirits lifted as they celebrated their victory. Peter, Thomas, and John stood together, watching the festivities. "I never imagined we could make such a difference," Thomas remarked, awe filling his voice. Peter smiled, feeling the warmth of camaraderie. "It's incredible what we can achieve when we lean on one another and trust in Jesus' teachings. Love truly has the power to change everything." Jesus joined them, his presence radiating peace. "You have learned well," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Each of you has risen above your doubts and fears. This is just the beginning. The world is vast, and there are many more hearts to touch, many more storms to weather." The disciples nodded, their resolve strengthened. They understood that their journey was far from over. They were now equipped with the knowledge that together, they could face any challenge. As they prepared to leave the village, the villagers gathered to bid them farewell. Tears of gratitude filled their eyes as they expressed their thanks for the hope the disciples had brought. "You have shown us the power of love," one villager said, emotion thick in his voice. "We will carry this message forward just as you taught us." With their hearts full and their spirits high, the disciples set out for new horizons, ready to spread the message of love, faith, and unity. They traveled from town to town, facing challenges, witnessing miracles, and continuing to learn from one another. Each village they visited brought new trials and triumphs, and the disciples grew closer as they supported one another through each storm. They encountered skeptics, the weary, and the broken-hearted, but each time, they relied on the lessons learned by the shores of Galilee. In one village, they met a woman who had lost her husband. Grief weighed heavily on her heart, and she struggled to find joy. The disciples gathered around her, sharing stories of their own losses and the hope they had found through Jesus. Together, they lifted her spirits, helping her see that even in the depths of sorrow, love could heal. In another town, they encountered a man burdened by anger and resentment. His pain had festered for years, causing him to lash out at those around him. Peter, recalling his own struggles, approached him with empathy. "I once let my anger define me," he confessed. "But love showed me the way. It transformed my heart." Through these encounters, the disciples became a beacon of hope, inspiring those around them to rise above their circumstances. They encouraged individuals to embrace their own stories of doubt and despair, reminding them that they too could find their wings. As their journey continued, they eventually arrived at a city known for its hostility towards outsiders. The atmosphere was thick with suspicion, and the disciples could feel the tension in the air. They approached cautiously, knowing that their message of love could be met with resistance. "Maybe we should turn back," Thomas suggested, unease creeping into his voice. What if we face violence or rejection? But Jesus stood firm, his eyes blazing with conviction. This is where love is needed most. We cannot shy away from the storms, we must face them head-on. Determined, the disciples began to share their message in the market square. At first they were met with scorn, jeers, and ridicule. A group of men stepped forward, ready to silence them. But instead of fighting back, the disciples held their ground, choosing love over confrontation. Fear has gripped this city for too long, Peter proclaimed, his voice steady. But we come to share a different message. A message of hope, love, and unity. We are not here to challenge you but to uplift you. The men hesitated, their anger faltering in the face of such unexpected kindness. One of them stepped forward, confusion etched on his face. Why do you care? Why would you come here when we have only met you with hostility? John replied gently, because we believe that everyone is worthy of love, even those who resist it. We know that beneath the anger lies pain and we want to help heal that pain. Slowly the crowd began to listen. The atmosphere shifted as the disciples shared their own stories of doubt and struggle, illustrating the power of love to heal and transform. Hearts began to soften, and the once hostile crowd found themselves reflecting on their own lives. As the days passed, the city began to change. The disciples stayed, continuing to share their message, forming connections and fostering understanding. Bit by bit, walls came down and relationships were built. People began to gather in the streets, sharing their own stories and experiences. Finally, the day came when the city's leaders invited the disciples to share their teachings in the town square. With the sun shining brightly, they spoke to a crowd that now filled the square with anticipation. Their message of love and unity echoed through the streets, breaking down barriers and building a new foundation of trust. As the gathering came to a close, the crowd erupted into cheers, and the disciples felt a swell of joy and gratitude. They had faced their fears and doubts, and in doing so had transformed an entire community. The disciples left the city with their hearts full, knowing they had made a lasting impact. They had faced storms together, soared above self-doubt, and had witnessed the incredible power of love to unite and heal. As they traveled onward, they carried the stories of the villagers in their hearts, knowing that they would share these lessons with others in their journey. They had become vessels of hope, encouraging those around them to rise above their fears and embrace the light within. In time, they would continue to teach and spread the message of Jesus, transforming lives and communities wherever they went. They knew that self-doubt might return, but they had learned how to rise above it together. Years later, gathered by the sea once more, the disciples reflected on their journey. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, reminiscent of the many sunsets they had witnessed together. They shared their favorite memories, their struggles, and the incredible transformations they had witnessed in the lives of others. Do you remember that first storm we faced? Peter laughed, the sound rich with nostalgia. I was so afraid, yet it was through that fear that I discovered my faith. Thomas nodded, his expression thoughtful. I've learned that doubt is not the enemy, it's part of the journey. It leads us to seek understanding and growth. John added, and love? Love has the power to heal not just ourselves but those around us. It's a force that cannot be contained. Jesus, listening with a smile, interjected, You have grown so much, my friends. You've learned that faith is not the absence of doubt, but the courage to act in love despite it. You've witnessed the incredible resilience of the human spirit and the profound impact of compassion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the water, the disciples felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They knew that their journey would continue, filled with new challenges and opportunities to share love and hope. Let us go forth then, Peter said, determination shining in his eyes. Let us continue to spread the message of love, knowing that we have the wings to rise above any storm that may come our way. The others nodded in agreement, their hearts united in purpose. With renewed strength and faith, they prepared to embark on the next chapter of their journey, ready to face whatever lay ahead, guided by love and the teachings of Jesus. And so the disciples stepped into the world, not just as followers but as champions of love, forever changed by their experiences, ready to inspire others to rise above self-doubt and embrace the beauty of faith. This is end of the story. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.